Recently, there's been a lot of discussion on the Japanese side of X about this sketching method using the lasso tool. Mostly artists raving about it, basically. So in this week's video, we'll look at what it is exactly, like how to use it, and see how it compares to the alternatives. The plan today will be to find out which method is the best sketching method for artists between this new trending Japanese method using the lasso tool, the construction method using a simple mannequin, or the silhouette method. How are they gonna place on our podium? Place your bets and let's get started. I'm Marc. I've been a professional artist for well over a week now, and I run a digital art school, and we're gonna be sketching bodies today, specifically using those 3 different methods. We'll start with the lasso tool method, and for this you'll just need the lasso tool in any of your preferred drawing software, and a way to fill the shape with approximately like black at 20% opacity. I know some software have an autofill option when using the lasso, so that will need to be enabled like in Clip Studio Paint, but in Photoshop, what I basically always use, that doesn't exist. Yikes. So here's the little workaround that I came up with. First, I needed to create an action to fill my selection. Selecting the fill option at 20% opacity, pretty simple so far. And Photoshop actually has a native hotkey to fill selections, which is Alt Backspace, but that always fills it at 100% opacity, so it wouldn't quite work in this case. Anyways, now with this action recorded, I don't want to have to click here every time because that slows down the workflow too much. So I assigned the hotkey Ctrl F to play the action instead. Now I'm all set. So now when I have a selection made, I just press Ctrl F and my selection is filled with a foreground color at 20% opacity. So here's how you would use this as a replacement for a loose sketch. Instead of creating a selection for the whole silhouette, I'm going to go joint by joint, body part by body part, slowly building up the full figure. Of course, it helps to know how the lasso tool works, like how you can add to your selection or subtract from it. But yeah, you can see how the low opacity creates a bit of a darker overlap around the joints, kind of helping emphasize them. And I actually like this because it makes it easy to gauge the proportions when the pose doesn't have much foreshortening. It makes distances really easy to measure at a glance. And with the whole body kind of assembled like this, you get this nice silhouette of a character that you can now just use as reference to draw your clean sketch over, but on a different layer. I would say it doesn't work as well in situations where there's going to be a lot of foreshortening though. Like it just gets really messy to read what's going on. And of course, having to set up my hotkeys to implement this into my workflow was a bit annoying. Like it's crazy to me that Photoshop doesn't have this feature natively, to be honest. But it's a minor inconvenience. It doesn't really feel like it's slowing me down as I work. At least not as much as I thought it would initially. Sketching this way definitely feels like it would be hard if I didn't have much experience though. Like while drawing this, I was constantly visualizing the body mannequin that I typically use. The same that I'll show you how to build later in the video. But before that, let's check out my older method of drawing the body using just a low opacity brush instead. I showed this method in detail in this older class that I made about like 10 years ago, and I still use it to this day quite a lot. But essentially it will be doing the same thing, just without the lasso tool this time. Nothing fancy to set up in Photoshop for it to work. You can just grab any brush with hard edges and paint at a low opacity the silhouette of your character. My initial gut feeling about the lasso method we saw first is that it would just take longer than simply doing it this way. Just for the simple fact that you gotta go around the shape you're trying to fill instead of just, getting these with a single large brush stroke. And it does feel a little faster the way I'm doing it now, but I think for most people there probably wouldn't be much of a difference. It's just that I'm so used to it by now I've picked up speed. But yeah, now here would be a good spot to pop a new layer and start working on my clean sketch. One thing that's interesting with the lasso tool is that it's slower to draw the contour of each shape, but I found myself a little more careful and planning those shapes a little better, which in the end kind of meant that I didn't have to rework them as much. For total speed, I think working with a low opacity brush still works better, and it's really easy to use. But the lasso is a super helpful tool when it comes to creating the flat colors or for shading in general. There's just so many helpful ways to use it in digital art. So if this method gets you to practice it more often, then I would say that's a big win. And I think a lot of it will come down to experience when choosing which method to use. So far, I would say the lasso tool requires probably the most experience to use effectively, while painted silhouettes are much more forgiving and less complex of a workflow to adopt for beginners. But we still have the construction method using lines to compare these two against. So let's see how it differs. But first, I think you'll want to hear about this sponsored segment. The once a year holiday sale from my QBrush store is in full swing. So from right now until the end of the year, you'll be able to get my complete art education program at half the regular price. That's the biggest discount I've ever offered for it. And also the last time you'll be able to get it for this kind of value because the price will be going up next year. You get lifetime access to all the content, nearly 100 hours of classes, free updates for life, a private access to our school's Discord, assignments, and a week-by-week study companion guide so you're never left wondering what to do next, or if you're ready to move on to more advanced material or not. So check out all the details with the link below and find out why over 30,000 other students have joined so far. And for all of you watching who joined already, I cannot thank you enough. Happy holiday. Alright, so now here's the actual method I would recommend for beginners. So far, while actually quite good, both techniques I went over were definitely better suited for more experienced artists because they were both kind of referencing the same proportions that I'll explain with this last method, what we'll call the line construction method. And I consider this better suited for beginners because we'll just be using simple geometric shapes that anybody can draw really, and you can also do this traditionally on paper too, which is a nice bonus. So here's how to construct the body with a more classic mannequin. Here, for the head, I'll start with a sphere, onto which I'll just attach a jaw. Longer for males and shorter for females, usually, in my case. Now, most average characters will usually be around like 6, 7 to 8 heads tall, and I can mark a line splitting the height in half. That's where the legs will begin. Now, the torso for this method will be egg-shaped, I guess, like a stretched out sphere, but the pelvis will be more of a bucket for males or look more like a lampshade for females. Then we have more egg shapes for the shoulders and even more stretched out egg shapes or ellipses for the forearms, thighs, and calves, the thicker parts of each limb. From there, I'll just connect all of those pieces using cylinders. My mannequins are pretty detailed now, so it's still missing a lot. I love to add stuff like an indication for where the clavicles are, shaping the rib cage a little better, details for the knees, and here a symmetry line going down the center of the body. That line just helps position the pecs, the belly button, the crotch properly, especially when the character's in perspective or like if the torso is twisted. And we got our constructed line mannequin to add to the lineup. I like this method because it gives the right silhouette pretty much right off the bat. Like the arms and the legs already look great, so it's super easy to add just a few more details for the anatomy, and I'm left with a very convincing body. So with the 3 variants done, how would I place those on the podium? In third place, I think it would have to be the lasso tool because although it works relatively well, this won't be easy for less experienced artists, and the extra difficulty using the tools or even like setting it up in the first place, that makes it even less approachable. Now in second place, which is it going to be? Well, like I said at the beginning of the video, I think it depends who you ask. But let's say you're a beginner artist, I would have the silhouette method in second place and the line construction method in first place because I feel I was only able to use the silhouette method and the lasso method because I knew the correct body proportions already. And well, that's something the line construction method taught me to begin with. So then for more advanced artists, I would swap those two instead. The lasso tool is really cool for sketching, but I find it was a bit of a gimmick. It's fun to switch things up once in a while though, so I might still use it to sketch here and there. Now, we looked at bodies, but if drawing the head is what you struggle with the most, especially the head in very extreme angles, you might want to check out this recent class going over the hardest head angles to draw and how to do it the right way. The link will be up on screen in a second, so I'll see you over there.